Yeah, I'd like 6,000 chicken fajitas, please.
I beg your pardon?
6,000 chicken fajitas.
Have you ever ordered your usual meal, opened the box, and thought, wait, this looks smaller? Same price, same menu photo, same name, but somehow less food. If that's ever happened to you, you're not imagining it. It's something happening across the entire restaurant industry right now, and it has a name, shrinkflation. Instead of raising prices directly, many chains quietly reduce portion sizes, tweak ingredients, or adjust how meals are assembled. Smaller patties, fewer fries, thinner layers, less filling, just subtle enough that most people won't notice right away, but over time, it adds up. And here's what makes it so interesting. Most of these changes aren't announced. There's no big sign that says now 20% smaller, no warning on the menu, because the goal isn't to shock you, it's to go unnoticed. And why is this happening? Because restaurants are under more pressure than ever. Rising food costs, supply chain issues, labor shortages, everything behind the scenes is getting more expensive. So instead of risking backlash by raising prices too quickly, some brands take a different route. They keep the price the same and quietly give you a little less. Now, to be fair, not every change is intentional, and not every location handles portions the same way, but when you start seeing the same patterns across major chains, it's no longer a coincidence, it's a strategy. So in this video, we're breaking down 20 US restaurant chains where customers have started noticing smaller portions, subtle menu changes, and differences that don't always match what they remember. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. Because the next time you order your favorite meal, you might start asking a very different question. Am I getting what I used to? 1. McDonald's. Let's start with the biggest name in fast food, McDonald's. If there's any company people notice changes from the most, it's this one. Because McDonald's has been part of people's routines for years, sometimes decades, which means when something changes, people remember. Now here's the thing. McDonald's hasn't come out and said, we reduced portions. But customers have pointed out subtle differences over time. Slightly smaller burger patties compared to what they remember, fries that feel like they don't fill the carton the same way, breakfast items that seem a little lighter, nothing dramatic, nothing obvious, but just enough to make you pause and think, wasn't this bigger before? And that's how shrinkflation works. Not through one big change, but through small, gradual adjustments. Now combine that with rising prices, and the perception becomes even stronger. Because when you're paying more, you expect at least the same amount of food, if not more. Another factor is standardization. McDonald's operates on extremely tight portion control systems. Everything is measured, timed, pre-portioned. So even a slight adjustment in those standards gets multiplied across thousands of locations, and suddenly, millions of customers feel it. But here's the key point. It's not always about intentional reduction. Sometimes it's about efficiency, less waste, faster service, lower costs, but for the customer, the result feels the same, less value. And that's why McDonald's is often at the center of the shrinkflation conversation. 2. Burger King next. Burger King. Burger King has always marketed itself as bold, flame-grilled, and satisfying. But recently, many customers have started noticing something different, portions that don't feel as generous as they used to. One of the most common observations is burger size. The Whopper is still iconic, but some customers feel the overall build isn't as substantial as before. Less filling, thinner layers, slightly lighter feel. Again, not a drastic change, but enough to raise eyebrows. Then there's the fries. Portion sizes can vary depending on location, but many people feel like they're getting fewer fries for the same price. And just like with McDonald's, perception plays a huge role. Because when expectations are built over years, even a small change stands out. Another key issue is inconsistency. Since Burger King is heavily franchise-driven, portion control can vary more from location to location. Some stores follow strict measurements, others may cut corners slightly during busy hours, and when you combine that variability with subtle portion adjustments, the overall experience starts to feel less predictable. 3. Wendy's. Now let's talk about Wendy's. Wendy's built its reputation on one key promise: fresh, never frozen beef. And for a long time, that helped it stand out. But with that higher quality positioning comes higher expectations. And recently, some customers have started noticing changes in portion perception. Burgers that feel slightly smaller, toppings that seem lighter, sides that don't feel as full. Now, Wendy's still focuses heavily on quality. But here's the challenge. When costs rise, maintaining both quality and portion size becomes difficult. So something has to adjust. And often, it's subtle portion control. Slightly less of one ingredient, a slightly smaller serving, not enough to be obvious, but enough to protect margins. There's also menu expansion. Wendy's offers a wide variety of items: burgers, chicken, salads, sides. And with more items comes more complexity, which increases the chances of variation in how portions are served. So, while Wendy's still delivers strong quality in many cases, the perception of shrinking portions is becoming harder to ignore. 4. Taco Bell. Taco Bell is one of the most creative brands in fast food, but it's also one of the most sensitive to portion perception. Why? Because most of its items are built from the same core ingredients, just assembled differently. That means even a small reduction in filling is immediately noticeable. Less meat in a burrito, less cheese in a quesadilla, less sauce in a wrap, and suddenly the entire item feels different. Then there's structure. Taco Bell items rely heavily on layering. If those layers aren't balanced, the experience changes dramatically. And with shrinkflation, those layers can become thinner over time. Another factor is price increases. When customers pay more but feel like they're getting less, the reaction is strong because Taco Bell has always been associated with value. So any shift away from that expectation is immediately felt. It's not just about portion size, it's about perceived value, and that's where the impact is biggest. 5. KFC. Finally, KFC. Fried chicken is one of the hardest foods to standardize because it depends on real, natural pieces of chicken. Different sizes, different shapes, and that creates a unique challenge when it comes to portion perception. Over time, customers have reported pieces that feel smaller or less meaty than before. Now, some of that comes down to sourcing and supply. Chicken sizes can vary depending on farming and processing, but from the customer's perspective, it still feels like a reduction. Then there are combo meals, buckets, boxes, and meal deals that may look the same, but feel slightly lighter. Again, nothing drastic, but noticeable over time. And because KFC is built around sharing meals, family buckets, group orders, portion perception becomes even more important. If it feels like there's less to go around, people notice immediately. KFC isn't alone in this, but it's one of the most visible examples of how natural food variation plus cost pressures can lead to a strong perception of shrinkflation. 6. Subway. Let's talk about Subway, a brand built entirely around one promise. You get exactly what you see. Your sandwich is made in front of you. You choose the ingredients, you watch it happen. So if anything changes, you notice immediately. And that's exactly why Subway is often part of the shrinkflation conversation. Over time, customers have pointed out subtle differences: slightly thinner layers of meat, less generous scoops of fillings like tuna or chicken, more careful, controlled portions of toppings. Now, to be clear, Subway has always had portion guidelines, but as costs rise, those guidelines can become stricter. And when employees follow those measurements more precisely, the sandwich can feel smaller than what customers remember. Then there's bread. Some customers feel loaves don't feel as full or dense as before. And since bread is the foundation of the entire sandwich, that perception matters. What makes Subway unique is also what makes these changes obvious, because everything is visible. There's no packaging to hide behind, no assembly line out of sight, so even small adjustments feel bigger than they actually are. 7. Chipotle Mexican Grill. Next, Chipotle Mexican Grill. Chipotle is known for generous portions. Big burritos, full bowls, heaping scoops. At least, that's the expectation. But recently, one word has been showing up more and more in customer conversations: skimping. Because unlike traditional fast food, Chipotle doesn't pre-portion everything. Employees serve food by hand, which means portion size can vary dramatically. One employee might give you a full scoop, another might be more conservative, and when ingredient costs increase, there's more pressure to control those portions. That's where customers start noticing changes. Less rice, less protein, smaller scoops overall. And because Chipotle built its reputation on generosity, even a slight reduction feels significant. When you watch your food being served, you're actively judging every scoop. So perception becomes reality. If it looks like less, it feels like less. And that's why Chipotle's portion changes, real or perceived, get so much attention. 8. Panera Bread. Step into Panera Bread, and the experience feels more premium. Clean environment, fresh ingredients, higher prices, and with that premium positioning comes higher expectations. But here's what many customers have started to notice: portions that don't always match the price, soups that feel smaller, sandwiches that seem lighter, bowls that don't feel as filling as they used to. Now Panera operates differently than fast food chains. It focuses on consistency, presentation, and efficiency, which means portion control is tightly managed. And when costs rise, adjustments often happen quietly, slightly smaller servings. More controlled ingredient distribution, nothing dramatic, but noticeable over time, especially for regular customers. And because Panera's pricing is already higher, those changes feel even more significant. 9. Five Guys. Five Guys is famous for one thing: generosity. Extra fries in the bag, big portions, over-the-top servings. It's part of the brand identity. But here's what makes Five Guys interesting in this conversation. Even small changes stand out more. Because expectations are so high, some customers have started noticing fry portions that don't feel quite as massive as before, burgers that feel slightly more controlled in size, toppings that are still generous, but a bit more measured. Now, Five Guys still offers larger portions than many competitors, but when your brand is built on more than enough, even a slight shift toward just enough feels noticeable. There's also cost pressure. Five Guys uses fresh ingredients and doesn't cut corners easily. So instead of drastically changing quality, the adjustments tend to happen in portion control. Subtle, gradual, but for loyal customers, very noticeable. 10. Shake Shack. Finally, Shake Shack. Shake Shack is positioned as a premium fast casual brand. Higher quality ingredients, higher prices, smaller menu, and that's where portion perception becomes critical. Because when customers pay more, they expect more, or at least enough. But one of the most common comments about Shake Shack is this: the food feels smaller than expected. The burgers aren't oversized, the fries are controlled, the portions are intentionally designed, not excessive. And that's not necessarily shrinkflation in the traditional sense. It's design. But here's the catch: when prices go up over time and portions stay the same or feel slightly smaller, it starts to feel like less value. And in today's market, value perception is everything. Shake Shack still delivers quality, but in a world where customers are comparing size, price, and satisfaction, that balance is getting harder to maintain. 11. Pizza Hut. Let's talk about Pizza Hut, a brand people remember very clearly. Why? Because pizza is one of the easiest foods to compare over time. Same size, same slices, same visual expectation. So when something changes, it stands out immediately. Many customers have started noticing subtle differences. Toppings that feel lighter, cheese that doesn't stretch quite the same, crusts that seem slightly thinner or less filling. Now, none of this is officially labeled as smaller portions. But that's how shrinkflation works. It's not about cutting the pizza from 12 inches to 10 inches. It's about adjusting what's on top and how much of it there is. Because toppings are one of the most expensive parts of pizza. Reduce them slightly and costs drop significantly. But from the customer's perspective, the pizza still looks the same until you take a bite and realize it feels different. 12. Domino's next. Domino's. Domino's is known for efficiency, fast delivery, easy ordering, consistent systems. But that efficiency comes with tight control. Every pizza is built using measured portions, exact amounts of cheese, precise topping distribution, and when costs rise, those measurements can be adjusted, not dramatically, but enough to make a difference. Customers have pointed out pizzas that feel slightly lighter on toppings, less loaded than they remember, more bread, less substance. Then there's the visual factor. Domino's pizzas are designed to look full, but because toppings are evenly distributed and controlled, they can feel less generous compared to more overloaded styles. And when expectations are high, even a small difference becomes noticeable. 13. Papa John's now, Papa John's. Papa John's built its reputation on one phrase, better ingredients, which means customers expect quality and consistency. But recently, some customers have started noticing changes in portion feel. Cheese layers that seem thinner, toppings that don't feel as generous, pizzas that look similar but don't feel as heavy. Again, nothing drastic, but noticeable. And here's why it matters more for Papa John's. Because it's positioned as a premium option. When you charge more, customers pay closer attention. They compare value more carefully, and even small changes stand out more. So while Papa John's still focuses on quality, the perception of shrinking portions becomes harder to ignore. 14. Little Caesars. Little Caesars operates on a completely different model. Low price, high speed, ready-to-go pizzas. And that model depends heavily on cost control, because when you're offering some of the cheapest pizzas in the market, margins are tight, very tight. So how do you maintain those prices when costs rise? Customers have reported pizzas that feel lighter, less cheese, fewer toppings, slightly thinner builds. But here's the key difference. At a lower price point, expectations are different. People don't expect premium quality. They expect value. So the reaction isn't always frustration. Sometimes it's acceptance. But even then, regular customers notice. Because when something is already simple, even a small reduction feels bigger. 15. Starbucks. Finally, Starbucks. This one is different because shrinkflation here isn't just about food, it's about drinks, and perception plays a huge role. Let's start with size. Starbucks uses unique sizing names: tall, grande, venti. But many customers feel like the actual amount of drink, especially after ice and foam, can feel less than expected. Then there's customization. Extra ice, extra foam, less milk. All of these factors can reduce the amount of actual beverage you're getting without changing the cup size. And because drinks are prepared individually, consistency can vary from barista to barista. Some fill generously, others follow exact measurements. Now add rising prices into the equation, and suddenly customers are paying more, while feeling like they're getting less. There's also food, pastries, sandwiches, and snacks that some customers feel have become smaller over time. Again, not dramatically, but enough to notice. Starbucks still delivers strong quality and branding, but when it comes to perceived portion size, it's one of the most talked about examples. 16. Dunkin. Let's talk about Dunkin, a brand built on speed, convenience, and everyday value. Coffee, donuts, breakfast sandwiches, simple, right? But when it comes to portion perception, things get interesting. One of the biggest areas customers notice change is beverages. Iced drinks, in particular, because a large portion of the cup is filled with ice. Now that's standard across the industry, but as prices increase, customers become more aware of how much actual drink they're getting. And when that ratio feels off, it creates the perception of shrinkflation. Some longtime customers feel donuts aren't quite as large or as filled as they remember. Slightly lighter, slightly less dense. Again, not dramatic, but noticeable over time. Breakfast sandwiches also come into play. Portions of eggs, meat, and fillings can feel more controlled, more measured, and that's the key pattern here. As costs rise, consistency becomes tighter, less variation, less extra. And for customers who remember more generous servings, that shift stands out. 17. Applebee's now. Applebee's. Applebee's has always positioned itself as affordable casual dining. Big plates, comfort food, value deals. But recently, customers have started noticing something different. Plates that don't feel as full as they used to. Portions that seem slightly reduced. Sides that feel more controlled. Now in casual dining, presentation matters. A full plate creates a sense of value, so even a small reduction can change the entire perception of the meal. There's also menu pricing. As prices go up, expectations increase. And when the portion doesn't feel like it matches the price, customers notice immediately. Another factor is standardization. Chains like Applebee's rely heavily on portion control systems, and when those systems tighten, the extra disappears. No more generous scoops, no more overflowing plates, and for longtime customers, that feels like less. 18. Chili's Chili's has built its reputation on bold flavors and satisfying portions. Fajitas, burgers, ribs, meals that feel big and indulgent. But like many casual dining chains, Chili's has faced rising costs. And with those costs come adjustments. Customers have pointed out fajita portions that feel slightly smaller, less meat on certain dishes, sides that don't feel as generous. Now here's what makes Chili's unique. Many of its dishes are shareable or meant to feel abundant. So when portions shrink, even slightly, it impacts the entire experience because the expectation isn't just to eat, it's to feel full. And when that expectation isn't met, the change becomes very noticeable. 19. Olive Garden. Let's talk about Olive Garden. This brand is famous for one thing: unlimited breadsticks and salad. So how does shrinkflation show up here? Not in the headline items, but in the details. Customers have noticed breadsticks that seem slightly smaller, pasta portions that feel more controlled, protein portions like chicken or shrimp that don't feel as generous. Now, Olive Garden still leans heavily on its unlimited concept. But here's the subtle shift. Initial portions can be smaller, requiring refills. And while refills are available, not every customer asks for them. So the overall experience can feel reduced. It's a smart strategy, but one that changes how value is perceived. 20. Red Lobster. Finally, Red Lobster. Seafood is one of the most expensive categories in the restaurant industry, and that makes it one of the most sensitive to shrinkflation. Because when costs rise, restaurants have fewer options. Raise prices too much, and customers leave, so instead, portions adjust. Customers have reported smaller seafood portions, fewer shrimp in dishes, lighter plating overall. Now Red Lobster still delivers its signature items, like Cheddar Bay biscuits, but when the main protein feels reduced, it becomes noticeable, because seafood isn't just part of the meal, it is the meal, and when that centerpiece feels smaller, the entire experience changes. So after looking at all 20 of these chains, you start to see a pattern. This isn't about one brand, it's about an entire industry shift. Shrinkflation isn't loud, it doesn't announce itself, it happens quietly, gradually, over time, a little less here, a slight change there, until one day, you realize something feels different. And here's the truth, restaurants aren't doing this randomly, they're reacting to rising costs, to changing demand, to a system that's getting more expensive to maintain. So instead of raising prices all at once, they adjust behind the scenes, and most people never notice. But now, you do, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. So the next time you order your usual meal, take a second. Compare it to what you remember. Because the smartest customers aren't just looking at price anymore, they're looking at value. Now I want to hear from you. Which restaurant do you think has shrunk portions the most? And which one still gives you the best value? Drop your answer in the comments, because your experience might help someone else avoid a disappointing meal. And if you made it this far, you already know something most people don't. It's not just what you pay, it's what you actually get.